Our presenter today is Sarah Ressler Wright, aka Vocab Gal. She has been teaching high school English for the past 13 years and is now the head librarian at her school. She is a national board certified teacher, and most excitingly, I think, she's received the Ohio English Teacher of the Year award. She has several other awards and designations as well given to her throughout her years of teaching. We're really happy to have Sarah as part of our Sadlier family. She has a weekly blog, Vocab Gal, and she shares with all teachers, administrators, and parents great ideas and insights to the importance of vocabulary instruction, best ways, best practices for teaching vocabulary, and particularly for the high school level. Today, Sarah will be talking about building vocabulary for success on high-stakes tests. Sarah, welcome once again. We are so happy to have you with us. I'm going to give you the controls here so that you can share all your great ideas with everyone on the line.
Hi, everyone. I am really excited to be here, and I'm going to get this show going, and you'll notice right here our goal of today is to have a working knowledge of test skills and strategies for students to do well on both current and future standardized tests. And I know that standardized tests can seem a little scary, so we're going to make them less scary and kind of fun to get prepared for. So first, our test prep checklist. So you think, are my kids prepared? Absolutely. Because number one, that they're going to recognize the learning targets they still need to review in regards to which standardized test issues they still have. Then you'll give them opportunities for review, and especially those ones that they still need to work on. And finally, most importantly, that we're going to talk about that they have tools for studying and that they know how to use them. So first, what I'm really excited about is that all of the handouts and the ideas that I'm going to share with you, you will get to see, and Laura's going to send you this email that has these handouts for you. So don't worry about taking notes. You will get these handouts, and then you can make them and print them out right for your kids tomorrow. So first, in terms of the top 5, my first hint on working with standardized tests is to make the complicated words that they're going to see mundane. And so what I do every day is we work on the vocabulary words, and I just use them in my everyday speech. So I always say when the student does anything well, oh, that student is worthy of approbation for being so meritorious. And that sounds awkward at the first beginning couple times, but after a while when I say, oh, he's worthy of approbation, oh, that's so meritorious, it just is what we say every day, and those students know those words. They're not scary anymore. And then I also talk about, oh, those belligerent students. Don't be belligerent, guys. Don't be truculent. And so anytime I talk about being belligerent and truculent, rather than sounding awkward or what is Ms. Ressler talking about, they know that I mean not being a good student. They know that I mean a discipline problem, and they understand those words. So the more that you can use what seems complicated to make it just an everyday phrase in your classroom, the more that those words will be easily understood, and then when they see them on standardized tests, they won't be afraid of big words because they are used to hearing them and using them each day. Speaking of these tough words, I always have every vocabulary word students link with an easy synonym. And it has to work really well, so when we say sanguine or sanguine, the synonym jolly is what I always tell my students. So I say, hey guys, we like to say that Santa is very sanguine. Or we can say jolly old St. Nick. And so now sanguine is no longer a big scary word, it just means jolly. Same thing that inveigh, you can't really get a one-word synonym, so I like to say urge strongly. So he inveighed against that, he urged strongly against that vote. And so again, having students just have a 1- or 2-word phrase or synonym for every vocabulary word is a really nice quick reminder. Speaking of speaking, my biggest fun thing that we do every day is that students have a chance to use their words all the time. And so anytime they come in with a vocabulary word and they say it aloud, I give them a sticker. And I have high school students, and yet they love this idea of getting little stickers. And I go and I get big packs, and so I have lots of little tiny stickers that I hand out anytime they say a word aloud. And so that really reinforces the positive aspects of using larger words, and the more that they hear these words, again, the easier they become. Every time students have a writing assignment, they're just expected to use 2 or 3 vocabulary words. And at the beginning of the year, they will always groan, oh, that letter needs 2 or 3 vocabulary words too, oh, that assignment too. But after a while, they just get used to it, and so the more that they have to integrate their vocabulary into all of the writing that we do every day, the more that they just see it as a part of their daily routine. And then finally, as we have different discussions, they'll earn extra points in their discussion if they use a vocabulary word. So as we have Socratic seminars or we have fishbowl discussions, if they can work in their vocabulary, they'll get extra points for that. And then again, that makes them sound very astute and sagacious, as I like to say, for using those big words in discussions about other aspects of the English classroom. This is a big one that we'll talk about a lot today. The more that students can start to hear what sounds right and wrong, the better. And so when students are working with standardized tests, and really with any vocabulary test you give them, if there's a sentence that they have to fill in the blank for, I always say, read it aloud to yourself. So they have to say quietly the full sentence and then insert each of the possible answers, and so they can hear what's right and wrong, especially because we use vocabulary so much in our speech throughout every class period, then they'll hear what works and what doesn't work. So I always try to tell students to trust their instincts, and that the more that we use these vocabulary words aloud, the easier it will be to understand what's working and what's not working. So my 4th tip, just read all of those sentences aloud with each vocabulary option. And finally, I know lots of great English teachers who do this all the time, so hopefully just a good reiteration for you. As you're coming upon new words, have students think about the word parts. And so when we get a vocabulary word that starts with bene or with mal, we talk about, okay, what does bene mean in Spanish class? What does malevolent mean, or what is a malignant tumor versus a benign tumor? So the more that you can call attention to the roots and the prefixes and the suffixes as you're just routinely talking about vocabulary, it doesn't have to be a whole unit, which is what I used to think, that we had to do only roots and all the time roots, and that got pretty confusing and pretty tricky. So now, anytime we just have a vocabulary word, we just do a quick little review. Hey, what do these prefixes and suffixes and roots mean? And then carry on with our day. So just little mini lessons as you go through the day, rather than such big lessons, still makes a difference. So that's my number 5 rule, thinking about your root words and your prefixes and suffixes when coming across new words. So again, this great handout that tells you all of that, you will get emailed, and then you can make copies for your students and talk about it as you need to, or just keep it for yourself as a good reminder. Next, this is your excellent handout that, again, I think this is even more valuable for students. They're basic strategies for answering any kind of test question. So first, this is what we're talking about. Again, that if the question asks you to define the word, replace the original word with each of the answer choices. So in this one, Little Bo Peep has lost her sheep, doesn't know where to find them, leave them alone, wagging their tails behind them. So when we look at wagging, shaking, leaving them alone, and they'll come home shaking their tails behind them. Well, that sounds pretty good, okay? Movement their tails behind them, that just doesn't work. It doesn't sound good. We as English teachers know it's not the right part of speech, but just for students, they'll hear that it doesn't sound quite right. Running their tails behind them, leave them alone and they'll come home running their tails behind them. Running doesn't quite work. Their tails aren't running in front of them. Jumping their tails behind them, again, it doesn't sound as great as shaking. So hopefully the students will just read each of those answers in the phrase itself and hear the one that sounds the best. And there you go. All right, so this one is a pretty basic strategy that will work for all kinds of questions. And this is one that I really emphasized when my students were taking AP tests, but also really great for SAT, ACT, really any kind of standardized test. So the key here is that you have to underline the section of the test that supports your answer. So the whole idea of proving your answer. Okay, so again, that same passage, why should she be happy? She has lost her sheep. Well, she doesn't know where to find them. That doesn't say anything about making her happy. Her sheep will return on their own. Well, it says, leave them alone and they'll come home. So I can underline that part. Her sheep like to wag their tails. This is true, but again, we have to prove that she should be happy. So there's nothing that really proves that. She can't find her sheep. That wouldn't make me very happy. So again, underlining that idea of leave them alone and they'll come home. I can justify my answer. All right, so again, underlining even clues that will help you. So what does it say about the sheep? You've got your 4 answers. Then let's see, which one can I underline and cross out? So you'll see that, again, we can underline that key home, they'll come home. So see, they have been trained to find out where their home is. You can cross out, and I have them deliberately mark out A and B, and I know a lot of people do this already. The more that you can physically cross out the wrong answers, the more that they can see the right answers in front of them. All right, so those are some basic test strategies and some basic ways that in the classroom you can get them ready. So I was rather confused on what the redesigned SAT looked like. And Laura gave me lots of good information so that this was really helpful both to me and hopefully to you. First, they talked so much about making the SAT relevant, that they didn't want it to be an ivory test for kids only who lived in ivory towers, but it needed to be relevant to our real world students. So now the words will be in context that they have to figure out. So again, all of these test strategies and these concepts about making complicated words mundane in your classroom will help because they're used to seeing words in context, but they still have to know what they are, so we still have to go over words. Second, we do this all the time as English teachers. We ask them to have command of evidence. So underlining key ideas, proving their points, this is what they're being asked to do on the redesign. They have to analyze their sources and essays. Again, this is what we've been teaching for many years, so hopefully shouldn't be too much of a shock, but it really does make things more relevant. Again, the readings are now more relevant. They're specifically pulled from nonfiction texts in current events, etc. This, if you've played with SAT versus ACT versus AP, now there is no penalty for wrong answers. So you can always tell your students they should guess every single question, and really it's their test-taking strategies and their knowledge that's being assessed. So I have another great handout that you will get from Laura that is answering these test questions a little more sophisticated. So the one that we did before was pretty basic. This gives you a little more sophisticated look at things, and it'll depend on your students which one that they want and when, really. So again, this first one is getting a little more specific. You want to find the more precise answer when you have 2 similar sounding answers. And so you can see I circled, and all of these questions are actually pulled from the example SAT that they gave all teachers on the redesigned SAT website. So I went to the actual questions and said, okay, are these going to work for my test solutions? And yes, these are great test strategies. So you see I circled reservations versus ambivalence versus intensify versus value. So value really is the weakest here in terms of the most precise answer. So we could cross out D, and then looking at ambivalence versus reservations. Ambivalence is a little stronger word. Intensity, again, kind of strong. I like ambivalence best, but we'll go back later in the passage and see more specifically exactly what they're asking for. But when you have 2 that you really like, look for the one that's more precise. And so then, again, like we've talked about 3 times now, the more that questions ask you to define the word, the better it is to replace each of the original words with the answer choices. So this is a specific question from the SAT. Coming decades, we'll see the intense clustering of jobs. So clearly, they are putting the word in context now. So we need to put it back into context. See a more emotional clustering of jobs and production. That doesn't sound quite right. A more concentrated clustering of jobs and productivity in a smaller number of bigger cities. That sounds better. A more brilliant clustering of jobs. That doesn't make much sense. A more determined clustering of jobs, innovation and productivity. That sounds pretty good too. Again, concentrated versus determined. We can go back, and concentrated is a little more precise of a word, and so we know concentrated is our best answer there. So, like we've talked about before, the more students can justify their answers, the better. And in this case, the SAT is asking them to justify their answers. And so here, the description of the first paragraph indicates what Ethan, of course from Ethan Frome, values most about Maddie is her. And then you have your 4 choices. But then the next question asks you which choice provides the best evidence for the previous question. So not only are we showing our students to justify their answers, but then that justification, that underlining, becomes exactly what they need to do to answer the following question. So great strategy all the way around. All right, next. I always find students are frustrated and concerned about themes or main ideas. And as much as we talk about this, as much as we say go back, reread the passage, we know not all our students are going to want to reread the entire passage. So I push them to look at basically the topic sentence and the conclusion sentence of each paragraph, and then paying special attention to the beginning and end of the passage. So you'll see that this one asks us for how the narrative shifts. And again, this is that earlier question, reservations to appreciation, ambivalence to recognition, intensity to concern, value to rejection. So by going back into the passage and just looking at the topic sentence and conclusion sentence of each paragraph and the full beginning and the end of the passage, they would be able to answer this question about narrative shift. And again, it's an idea, theme, main idea kinds of issues. So this strategy works for a lot of different questions. Okay, so then again, when I think about theme, I have learned this over many years of teaching students. I finally say, okay, theme equals attitude plus idea. And that seems more specific than what's just a general word for the theme. That doesn't get specific enough. So what's the attitude towards that idea? And I always say, what's their attitude? And I give them a little hand wave, and that always makes them laugh a little bit. So when we think about theme, we think about attitude. And so you'll see what is most strongly suggests the researchers share which assumption. So what's their assumption, what's their attitude about a certain thing. So here, employees who work from home are more valuable. That's some attitude about those employees versus not so much attitude. We'll do additional productive work. We'll do these other things. We'll have lengthy commutes. It's not an attitude. And so really teaching students to look for attitude when looking at an assumption or a main idea and a theme is hopefully a good strategy for you to use. All right, now our favorite part, the essay question. So they do have a lot of good strategies, but I always tell students, as we all do, I think, outline or web before you begin your essay. Write a thesis. And this is our #1 strategy to tell all our students, have your thesis. And then not just a thesis, but I have them write down just a key idea for each paragraph. Your argument is that they're going to be, that the settlers were angry towards the Native Americans coming in. Then what are you going to say in each paragraph? The first one is going to be about early attitudes, maybe how they changed, and then final attitudes. What is going to be your organization for each body paragraph, not just your overarching argument. As they read the passage, I have them underline and then sort of think about what are quotes and specific information that they can use in each paragraph. And so for paragraph #1, after they have their focus, I can star maybe for paragraph #1 or put a little #1 next to key ideas from the passage they can use for paragraph 1. Same thing that they're going to underline and then number key ideas they can use for paragraph 2. So they already have their evidence before they start writing the essay. They know, okay, this is what I'm going to talk about in this paragraph, #1, #1, #1. This is what I'm going to talk about in paragraph 2, number 2. This is what I'm going to talk about in paragraph 3, number 3, number 3, number 3. All right, and then always our big dread is how are they going to begin that essay? And so I like to say start with an interesting quote and have 1 or 2 memorized. An analogy is always a really good strategy. This is like this versus that terribly boring and dull asking a question that no one ever wants to answer. So I try and say quote, analogy, if nothing else, a general idea that can work them into the specific idea. Okay, so now we have an actual sample writing prompt from the SAT. And so you'll see here that they tell the students, consider how he uses evidence, reasoning, stylistic, and persuasive elements. So they're asking the students to pick these elements out as they read the passage, which is pretty sophisticated. And then here's the specific question. How he builds his argument, 1 or more of the features, the logic and persuasiveness of the argument, focus on the most relevant features. So again, the elements I just talked about and what I like to coach my students to do are exactly how they're going to want you to answer this question. And again, we should not explain whether we agree with his claims or not, but how he builds that argument. And so this is a sophisticated skill, but it's a good skill. We want to know how writers act persuasively. What are they doing? Okay. So as you can see, here are the top 5 tips on how to get your kids prepared for just the vocabulary aspects of the SAT. Here are some basic test question strategies that might work for your earlier grades as you're working into the test prep years, and then for your more sophisticated writers and test takers, the 3rd and final handout. So these are my key strategies and ideas that you'll be getting. And hopefully we really have covered some ideas that you now know and have this working knowledge of test skills and strategies to help your students. All right, so this is my blog, Vocab Gal. It is really easy to find. You just Google Vocab Gal. And as you can see that every week we have the SAT Word of the Week. So if you don't already have words you're choosing, just come to the website and you can get all the great SAT specific words. And you can just use 1 a week and make that just a really easy, relevant word all week in your classroom. And then I also have an activity, an author interview, something great every week that you can download, print off, and use right away in your classroom. Everything is relevant, and if you want to go back and find all the old resources, you can just click resources and it has listed everything, or you can also search here from the different author interviews and teaching strategies, look at seasonal activities, etc. So Laura, what questions do we have? How can I be assistance?
Okay. I'm going to give everyone a little reminder to go ahead and expand your control panel and write your questions in the question box. I'm going to take back control, Sarah. Thank you for all those great thoughts and ideas. So we have a few questions already, but believe me, there's time for more questions. So please go ahead and write your questions in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. So Sarah, the first question is, when is the new SAT going to be administered? I actually can take this one. It's the spring of 2016. So it would be this school year that would be really helpful for everyone to put to use your ideas because come spring, and that will be the first time that everyone will be able to see the new redesign. But it'll be the spring. I think it's March. The next question's for you, Sarah. Where do you get your vocabulary words? Do you get them from SAT or SAT books, or where do you get them?
Good question. The way that I came to Sadler was because my school was using the Sadler vocabulary book, and I loved it. I had used another book at another school and really didn't like it, and so I used the vocabulary books specifically that Sadler puts out, and there's one, I think now, first, second grade through 12th grade, and we can help you if you need a specific book for your grade level, but they actually have 20 words per unit that are all pulled from SAT sources. And so I always feel really good that my students come back and say, yeah, all these words were on the SAT, Ms. Ressler, you were great. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sandra, really, for giving me the words to use. But then the words every week that we put on the blog are from the vocabulary books, but also you can use those as a good jumping off point.
Good, thanks. Okay, so here's another question. What type of essay should students practice for? An example like analytical essay?
Oh, the persuasive essay is really sort of the essay that the SAT is looking for. And as you saw from the example, it's to specifically persuade readers about how the author was persuasive, which is I guess analytical as well. But I always sort of think in terms of persuasive that I always sort of argue with the students. They're going to say he used these persuasive techniques to make it work. I was like, no, he didn't. Prove it to me. And I always take some attitude with them and say, you gotta prove it to me. And so then they, well, look here, Ms. Ressler, this is, and so they have to obviously write that in essay format, but they have to pull out the evidence and really prove that he used these persuasive techniques. So it's always really kind of persuasive because they're persuading the reader to see their viewpoints. So it's, yeah, an analytical persuasive essay, essentially.
And another question, do you advocate teaching roots, prefixes, and suffixes as a way to learn vocabulary?
Good question. I don't, because I find that as soon as you teach one, if you do MAL, and then you spend a month on MAL, by the end of the month, kids they know what MAL means, but then they're really confused on the nuances of malevolent versus malnutritious versus it becomes rather confusing if you only focus on one or two roots and then test them on all the different aspects of those words. So I find that if students have an understanding of the key ideas, like mal means bad, okay, so then what's the other part of the word, they can figure it out, and you don't need to deliberate so much on roots, suffixes, and prefixes. It's more of a good strategy to attack a word from, but not how to teach vocabulary as a rule, just because they get bogged down with trying to figure out the nuances of each individual mal word versus sort of seeing the big picture of mal means bad. And so words that start with mal, I'm going to think bad, and then I want to know a nuance from that. Does that make sense, Laura?
Yes. Yes, it does. I think they are important to review for the reasons that you had stated in your presentation, but there is a line of overdoing it and only learning words that way. I think there's a balance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ones that don't make sense, and yeah, I find it gets very tedious and overwhelming versus just a whole lot of great, cool words from a lot of different sections that they can see in all their reading, and you can have better discussions because it's not just all one word focus or one root focus.
Here's an interesting question, Sarah. How many
Yes.
words is too much to learn a week? I use the vocabulary workshop book as well. This teacher tells us.
Thank you for asking that question. I'm kind of a rogue when it comes to Sadler, and I have told them this many times that I do about 10 words a week. And so it takes me usually about 2 to 2.5 weeks to do one unit, which is 20 words. But I find we do 2 words a day. And so that means that on Friday we review 2 words, and then we often take our quiz over the first 10 words. And the following Friday, sometimes we take our quiz over all 20 words, or sometimes we wait until the following Monday or Tuesday to do another review activity and have some fun. But just in general, I find 2 to 2.5 weeks for one set of vocabulary is enough, because I really want to concentrate on 2 words a day rather than, hey, let's talk about 10 words in one day. I'm out by word number 2. I really want to make each day's words meaningful.
Yeah, we're listening to you too.
I
just want to flip to the next slide. Sarah will be doing another, actually 2 vocabulary webinars in the future. I just have one up here this is for actually grades 6 through 12. Let's Do Vocabulary will be activities and games and tip sheets and resources, you know, all from her blog. So I would think that maybe you want to come to this webinar as well. It's on October 27th at 4 o'clock. And I do want to just back up a minute. So here is Vocab Gal blog on sadlerschool.com, or you can just go to vocabgal.com. And she has all of these columns here, all these categories of vocabulary games and writing activities, words of the week, author interviews, true author interviews that she's spectacular at, teaching strategies and seasonal activities, and more. So if you go up to resources here and you have the drop down, you can go to all the free resources that Sarah has built and created. And that's at no charge to you. You can go right now and go get them. We don't have any more questions. I do want to thank everybody for coming on. I know it's your afternoon, after school. You're still getting used to this after-school routine. And so thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you at another vocabulary workshop, Vocab Gal webinar in the near future. And Sarah, it's always great to have you as a guest presenter. Thank you so much for sharing your ideas.
Thank you. Yay.
Okay, everyone, have a great afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you on the 27th. Bye now.
Bye.